Hey, coworkers.
Welcome to Coworkers in Crime, the podcast where office chatter meets crime discussion.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Krystal.
Yes, we really do work together.
And yes, we're totally obsessed with true crime.
From water cooler whispers to cold case deep dives,
we're here to bring you stories that keep us chatting way past our coffee breaks.
So grab your coffee,
lock your desk drawer, and let's get into this week's case.
Krystal, today we're going to unpack the evolution of police interrogation. And I thought this would be a good follow-up from our Miranda case that we did in episode 2.
Yeah, and we're diving into some of the more controversial issues, like Miranda double questioning, also known as two-step interrogation, which makes a lot of sense now, but I'll tell you, for a while there, I was like, what's the difference between double questioning and two-step? Nothing. It's the same thing. It's what they AKA'd it.
Yeah, and we're also going to touch on a newer Supreme Court case from 2022, Vega versus Tekoh, that changed what happens when Miranda rights are violated.
I think I'm always a little jarred when I see the number 20 in front of the year when it comes to things they have to keep amending. But the different law channels that I watch, they talk about how far behind the legal system is. It hasn't caught up to technology. It takes time. So it makes sense there's a 20 in front of it. That's actually really scary.
It's within the last 5 years is what blows my mind. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's start with the early days of the third degree. And we're going to go way back to the early 1900s. Interrogations were brutal, and police used beatings, threats, sleep deprivation, whatever it took to get a confession.
It wasn't hidden either. It was out in the open. The 1931 Wickersham Commission documented widespread torture. One of the most infamous examples is Brown versus Mississippi in 1936. 3 black men were whipped with leather straps and hung from trees until they confessed. Gross.
Absolutely. It surprises me that it takes the Supreme Court calling those confessions revolting to the sense of justice, that anything starts to change. That case marks the beginning of constitutional limits on interrogation.
So once physical force became legally risky, police decided to shift to psychological tactics. The Reid Technique came around in the 40s and 50s. It's still widely taught. It's one of the go-tos for interrogation, and it's built on guilt presumptive model. So the core components is you start with an assumption of guilt. So as soon as you go in to talk to this person, you just assume that they are guilty and you start stopping them with any denials. So if they start going down any kind of path that is pulling away from any admittance of being in the right area or anything like that, you drag them away from that train of thought. You don't even let them go down that. You're like, we're not going to entertain that. We're only here to talk about, we already know what you did. We just want to hear your side of the story. So if you've ever heard an interrogation, you've ever listened to one, that's when you really it's a shiny, hey, I'm using Reid, because it's, we already know what happened. We're just trying to give you the opportunity to tell us why, so people don't presume you're a monster. So they cut off denials. They offer moral justifications look, sometimes good people do bad things. That's just what happens. It doesn't make you a bad person. People snap. Did she throw something at you? Or and they start trying to figure out. They minimize the seriousness of the crime, and they reframe confessions as this was your best option. You did the best thing you could. Just, that's how you know Reid is happening. Sometimes I'm that worked flawlessly, and it works really well for the right cases, but it also works too well for the wrong ones. If that makes sense. I don't know if you like the way I say that, but that's what I think.
Right. And we have a couple good examples of, how these interrogation techniques were used. In Ashcraft versus Tennessee from 1944, the suspect was interrogated for 36 hours straight under bright lights. No physical violence, but the court said the conditions were inherently coercive.
Yeah, if you think, just everyone imagine, coworkers, close your eyes. Think about you're being interrogated. You think about a room where there's a chair, a table, someone sitting across from you, and a bright light over your head. I don't know why, but that's what I think of. And when I see bright lights over my head, I feel like I'm being interrogated. So I think that's just what we think when we think of interrogation. And then another case, Spano versus New York in 1959, pushed it even further. Police used the suspect's friend, a young officer, to guilt him into confessing. So the court system emphasized Spano's limited education and emotional vulnerability as a no-no. Like, we don't do that. Not doing it.
So even before Miranda, the court was already starting to recognize that coercion is not just physical.
We're so early in our game here, but I will tell you, the Miranda episode has been a really popular one, despite the fact that I was completely lost in it and let you just teach me that whole episode. That I've had a lot of people reach out and say they love that, which is great because that's our favorite one. It's a neat thing that it has now become a series for us instantly. You know, when you were telling us about Miranda in episode 2, Ernesto was interrogated for 2 hours without even being told he had the right to remain silent or ask for a lawyer.
His written confession even had a pre-printed line saying it was voluntary. So was it voluntary? Because he didn't know he could refuse. And then the Supreme Court got involved because they appealed it. And they said, if you're in custody, police must tell you your rights before questioning. So now, why wasn't Miranda enough? And we'll see that later in this episode. It can lead to a lot of things. So Miranda tells people their rights, your right to remain silent and your right to representation. But it doesn't regulate how questioning actually happens, which is that double questioning that we talked about at the top of the episode. But then there's the gaps in where in interrogation tactics and double questioning live. So why is this so dangerous? This is where I think we're going to get a lot of the false confessions. And I think we've talked about this. I feel like I would confess to just about anything if someone was like, no, you were there. Oh, okay. I was there. Like, it's the police. They must know what's going on, right? Like, they're asking me the questions. And so this is especially risky for juveniles, neurodivergent individuals, and people with mental health challenges. And it relies on behavioral clues, not the word there. Behavioral cues that science does not support. Confidence over accuracy.
I think something you said there is really important. It's the power imbalance. This is an authority figure. I believe what they're saying. So even juvenile neurodivergent, mental health, sometimes it's just like, I was always raised to respect my elders and respect people in authority. My teachers, my, peers, like sometimes you're just like, well, that's my boss. Maybe that is what I'm supposed to be doing. Or that's a police officer. If that's what he says happened, I must have done something.
Right. And I mean, there's people who use it the right way. And then there's those bad eggs who will use it the wrong way. And I think that's where trying to stay balanced and credible begins. Supporters will argue it works when it's used properly, which, like we just said, and it's a tool, not a guarantee that through your questioning, you're going to get to the answer. And bad outcomes come from misuse, not the method itself.
It's that part. Like, I think that when I listen to a Reid Technique and you can tell, like, and then it comes out that the person is actually innocent, it's like, is it that the Reid Technique works every time, whether you're innocent or guilty? Or is it the Reid Technique was used improperly? And I definitely am not an expert, so that's why I wouldn't be able to stand up and argue or defend that. But I think its bad outcomes come from misuse, not because the method itself is bad. So good point. If they don't tell you your rights ahead of time, the confession is presumed involuntary. But, and this is important later, Miranda is a procedural safeguard, not a constitutional right in itself.
And after Miranda, just like I feel like anytime something goes into place, there's always workarounds, right? They find ways to work around it. And some departments did that. They started using a workaround, which was question first, warn later.
The rise of the two-step interrogation. So with the double questioning. So here's how that works. They interrogate without warning. They get a confession. Oh, wait, before we get too far, let me read you your Miranda rights. Have you ever had this read to you? This is a procedure. This is what we do. We have to do this with everyone. Don't think too far into it. I've seen that happen. And then you have the suspect repeat the confession because now you got what you wanted and now it's time to read you your rights so we can use it.
So a case from 1985 was Oregon versus Elstead. And this was a teenager who made an unwarned admission at home by saying, I was there. Later at the station, after proper warnings, he gave a full confession.
The court said the second confession was admissible because the first was voluntary, just unwarned. Police departments interpreted this as permission to question first and warn later.
And here comes another recent case from 2004, which is Missouri versus Siebert, which is the poster child for deliberate two-step interrogation.
Yeah, the officer admitted he was trained to interrogate Siebert for 30, 40 minutes without warning, get her to confess, take a short break, Mirandize her, and then have her repeat everything.
And the Supreme Court said these tactics threatened to thwart the Miranda's purpose. They looked at factors like it was the same officers, same locations, overlapping questions, no meaningful break, and no attempt to quote-unquote cure the violation.
Justice Kennedy's concurrence, which often controls, said that the key is intent. If police deliberately use a two-step strategy, the second confession must be suppressed. So my understanding, sometimes when you first pick somebody up, they just talk. You don't Mirandize someone you're not questioning. You only Mirandize when you question. So I think when they said in the earlier, it was admissible because it was a voluntary statement. But if they had been saying, what made you do that? Or why would you have said that? Or, tell me more. You have to Mirandize to ask those questions.
In 2011, we have Bobby versus Dixon. The court clarified that Siebert only applies when the two-step is intentional.
If the first unwarned statement wasn't part of strategy, if it was just a mistake, then Elstad still applies, the teenager, where he just gave a voluntary statement. And then later, confession can come in.
So the key question becomes, did police intend to get around Miranda?
Bobby versus Dixon is sort of like what I was saying, is if they're just voluntarily blurting.
I feel like that's like the when people confess when they call 911.
Yeah.
And it's all up to, and they're just like,
I shot him.
Words.
Yeah, or shot her. Yeah, they just, you need to come now. I did this. And then they try to suppress the 911 call. But that's a Bobby versus Dixon. So now let's talk about Vega versus Tekoh, because the case changed the landscape in a big way.
And this is the recent one we talked about at the beginning. Yeah. This is 2022. So we're, 2026? 4 years ago? This is crazy. Not crazy to me. This just blows my mind that it's this recent. And we're, 1966, we did Miranda, and here we are, 60
That's a
some
big
odd years
gap.
later.
That's an aha
and
gap.
we're still talking about it. Tekoh was a hospital worker accused of sexual assault. A deputy questioned him without giving him Miranda warnings, and Tekoh wrote a confession. He was later acquitted at trial.
Yeah, Tekoh then sued the deputy under Section 1983, the federal civil rights statute, arguing that the unwarned interrogation violated his Fifth Amendment rights.
The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that a Miranda violation does not give someone the right to sue an officer for damages under Section 1983.
We kind of talked about that in Miranda. If you remember, we talked about you can't sue because Miranda is a statute, not a...
right.
Can't remember exactly how we said it, but we did talk about that. And it's huge because the court said Miranda is a rule, a safeguard, not a constitutional right there. That's exactly what we said in the first one. So even if police violate Miranda, you can't sue them for money damages. I think that's the amendment that we read that we were like, wow, this one's so recent. So when we got down the amendments, and I think we were at like 25, I think this was like I think this was like the 25th Amendment, if I remember right. It was somewhere way down in the amendments.
So the only remedy is to suppress the statement at trial. But if you're never charged or you're acquitted, like Tekoh, there's no remedy at all.
That raises real concern for civil rights advocates. If officers face no civil liability, what's the incentive to follow Miranda in borderline situations? They're just kind of running rogue out there. They're not going to get their hand slapped. I mean, they might get a hand slap, but they're not going to lose a finger, I guess. Like, there's no real punishment.
So why does this still matter? False confessions are a documented problem. The Innocence Project reports that about a quarter of DNA exonerations involved false confessions.
And juveniles are especially vulnerable. Think of Brendan Daisy from Making a Murderer. He was Mirandized, but the interrogation was heavily criticized as coercive, and I would have to side with that. It was very coercive.
So Miranda warnings alone don't guarantee a voluntary confession. And with Vega versus Tekoh, the only remedy left is suppression, which doesn't help people who never go to trial.
It's a good point. It's a reminder that interrogation law is still evolving, and the balance between effective policing and constitutional rights is always shifting.
So that's the journey from third degree all the way to psychological pressure, to Miranda, to the two-step tactic, and now even more recent, Vega versus Tekoh.
And it shows that even 60 years of Miranda, we're still debating what it means and how far it goes. I really want to continue down this thread of history, the history of. I'm making connections that I hadn't made before. I'm starting to piece things together that I notice in everyday law that I watch. So I think that you kind of opened a door here for not.
I like history, so I love
I did
history. So
not
this is
feel
what it
that
came out.
way in high school, sadly.
That was my favorite class.
I think we're going to start seeing accelerated change in our law system. I think we are going to start watching some movement in things being amended and in new statutes being put in place. So if you're listening and you really like this thread, I know that people who know us personally do. We've heard some great feedback on it. We enjoy it. So the encouragement to keep, we were going to do it anyway, but the encouragement to keep doing this actual history of the episodes is great. So, thanks for listening.
Great. I like getting into them because it's nice to know where things came from, and it wasn't always there. So you think of all those people who, had to appeal up to the Supreme Court and make their case. And then it's put, they're like, yep, you were wronged. And now you see change. And it just baffles me that 60 years later, we are still talking about how Miranda rights can be violated, how you can appeal up to the Supreme Court on those Miranda rights. And we're still seeing outcomes. And I think we're going to see more and more because of all the technology, the AI stuff, all the advancements in technology. The law has to catch up. And I think we're going to see more and more appeals, maybe not based on your Miranda rights, but based on AI and technology and just that ever evolving space of technology.
And sometimes I forget we share a brain until you do what you just did, because as you were saying, like as technology and things advance, I was thinking, listening to you, AI and things is not going to speed it up. You have to go all the way to the Supreme Court. You know what that takes? Time. And I wonder if some of these automations and quicker ways of doing things and being able to search case codes and laws and things quicker, is AI going to infiltrate that space where they get an AI they trust that says, in live time while it's transcribing live court, it's saying, it's pulling case code for lawyers. Like, I wonder how that's going to evolve. And because sometimes the saddest thing is how long it takes for those who have been wronged to be even heard. And the stage they have to get to be heard takes so long to get up there. It's so unfair. You almost have to be prosecuted publicly first, where, the public opinion of you has been tarnished so poorly. And then by the time your story gets fully heard, everybody's like, oh, man, why was that allowed to happen? It is kind of like shame on everyone for believing everything you hear. But man, when you're trying to protect your family and you're hearing that this person over here that lives in your neighborhood is accused of these things, I'm not taking a chance, man. Like, you're not coming near my home if I think that these things could be true. But when you find out none of them are, and it takes years and it's too late, they've already lost everything, that's devastation. That is not justice. But I do appreciate everyone listening and the people that reach out, like our coworkers. We need our Easter egg for this episode, because they did race. So Lego Man won. What is our code for the other one? Run Club. So we have Lego Man and Run Club. Lego Man
Run Club
won.
was not fast enough.
Run Club 0. Yeah. So mark on the Run Club. They'll get to it. He said, I don't know. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. This is out of my realm. I have to go find it and seek out time. And Lego Man's like, I wake up to it. It's my alarm clock. He didn't say that.
I like that. That's good. And we will have our guest coworker on soon.
Yes, first guest. We're starting to plan it.
Her. Yeah, We've reached out. We've asked her to pick a case that she wants to discuss, and we do get veto rights so that it's not overly devastating to us and we're not kept up at night.
I don't know how.
I will
say normally her cases aren't where we have to call her Mean Case Tracy, because she's not. Tracy's fabulous. And I think she's going to bring so much fun to the episode. I cannot wait. She cracks me up so often.
She does.
Almost everything that comes through, I immediately smile when I see a text from her because I'm like, this is going to be good. And she's just like,
Right.
okay. And I'm like, dang it. I was
Right.
waiting for
I was waiting for my humor of the day. Come on now.
Yeah, she's so funny.
No, she is good, and it will be a fun episode, and I think we'll all learn a lot from it.
Yeah, we have a couple of lineups of people, of our coworkers out there that want to come on to cases. So if you have a case, give it to us. We have our Sammy coworker who's going to come on and talk about a case that she has. So that one we're going to slate up for about a month from now. My daughter really wants to be involved in some of the cases. It's really interesting because 2 of the cases that she's talked about are over 20 years old, which is so interesting because the cases are older than her, and the fact that she wants to be on it. And I know you've had
and
a couple
she knows
people.
about them. Like she
She knows well
that
about them.
I didn't know about one of the cases. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like,
yeah,
what?
yeah. It's interesting because she never was really, at least didn't appear to be very interested in anything I ever listened to, and I usually listen in my headphones. Like we would drive, long distances and she's listening to her music and I'm not, music I'm not really into. So I would put in my headphones and listen to my podcasts and things that I would listen to when she was young. So it's not like I just blared the things that I listen to. It's usually through headphones that I listen to my stuff. But when she started talking to me about, the Innocence Project picking up Peterson, and when she started talking to me about John Bonet and some of the things that have come back out about that. And I know that means she's listening to podcasts of her own and watching things that are coming out. But, to debate with her on one of them, I was like, yeah, agree, high five. And then I was like, I did not raise you to think this way because I don't agree with what you're saying. And we'll get into it when she comes on. But yeah, and I know you've had people talk with you. Like, I think we talked about bringing on your siblings. I think we've talked about your kiddos.
Yeah, my son's girlfriend. She's super excited. She already has a case, cool. I think.
Cool.
And yeah,
I love it.
But I was like, we got to bring Tracy on first because she was my first. She was
Tracy's
my first
OG.
true crime buddy. Her and I talked. I mean, we used to send crime stories back and forth to each other all the time. Just like, did you read this? And then give some commentary on it. So her and I have been doing that for years, and I think it wouldn't be right if we if we went with somebody else. So apologies to all of our other coworkers and honorary coworkers, but Tracy has to come on first. But like you said, we want to get information out there for people, get those cases that might be underreported, give them a little bit of more light to our listener base. And, and we'll continue doing these. We just want to get information out there, and it's our way of doing it.
Don't talk to the police without a lawyer. I mean, guilty or innocent. Have a lawyer present so that the legal system is in effect from the very beginning. Even if you've done something wrong or not done anything wrong, make sure that every step of the way your rights are being protected. I hear this from lawyer all the time, plug for Peter Tragos, but if the law can't work for the worst of us, it won't work for the best of us. So think about it before you go in to be questioned. They are experts. Don't go play in a field you don't know. It's just It's so dangerous. So hopefully you learn something.
Learn something.
Yeah. I tell my husband, if something happens to me, whether you did it or not, don't talk alone, buddy.
We're going to have to come up with a set of office rules. Don't talk alone might be the first one.
Yeah. And then
never talk alone.
What Scotty says all the time, don't light up a room. Yeah.
Right.
She always lit up the room. Stop lighting up rooms. You don't want to be a victim. Well, loved hanging out with you today, coworkers. Another fun episode in the books. What a great time. I always enjoy this. This gets funner every time, Rachel.
It does. I think we're getting better. We're getting better. We're still learning, but we're getting better. And yeah, like I said, drop your ideas in our socials or email.
Yeah, keep the ideas coming.
There's only so many cases we know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I love getting sent them because I'll tell you, I've learned about some cases I didn't know were happening. So turning over all the dark corners of our country, ugh,
And the international
also,
aspect. We've seen a couple from
yes, the
Japan.
one you mentioned in Japan. I do want to talk about that one.
That one sounds interesting.
And it isn't, how do you do the history of for that? Because I don't even know that it applies. But I guess we could kind of talk about how in Japan, this doesn't apply. So they're able, or it's stricter, which would be my guess. It's probably a lot stricter.
Right, because different countries obviously have different legal systems. And what's not allowed in ours might be allowed in others. I mean, I don't know. Then that's one thing, there's a travel rule. Know the laws where you're going. Because U.S. laws and things do not apply everywhere just because you're a U.S. citizen.
Yeah. The system doesn't go with you.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, coworkers, for joining us. We'll see you next week for our next case.
See you next week.
That wraps up this week's episode.
Thanks for listening, whether you're at your office, at your home, or somewhere in between. We're glad you're here.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Like what you heard, leave us a review and share it with your coworkers.
Got a case you want us to cover or office drama that feels criminal? Send it to us at coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com or check the episode notes for all of our social handles. Until next time, coworkers.
Stay curious, stay safe, and stay caffeinated.